Hi everybody, welcome to Christian Homestead. My name is Jared. I'm so excited about this video because there's so many times where I think that I've found everything there is to find about Adam-ondi-Ahman or the New Jerusalem or any topic that we cover on this channel. There's some of them where I just feel like I've exhausted everything that there is. But then there's something that'll just come out of the blue, and this is one of those things. And this is kind of a big one. So I got an email from Jeff Struthers II, subject line, watch the center place of Zion, Alvin R. Dyer, 1967 on YouTube. And in the email, Jared, and then he posts the link, has some good gems since Alvin R. Dyer giving a BYU devotional all about Missouri and its central role. Talks about the temple at Adam-ondi-Ahman near Spring Hill. This was just released hours ago from 1967. I got this email on the 13th of February, but I'm just getting into it right now. Frankly, I almost passed this up because when I saw the subject line, I was like, oh, I think that's something I've already seen because, you know, it just looked familiar. And I was like, oh, it's from 1967. There's no way that this is something that's new. But it turns out, I guess BYU, they must be in the process of going through old speeches and publishing them on their website for BYU speeches. Like I said, you can also watch this on YouTube, and you can see here it was uploaded on the 13th of this month. So I really just wonder how much more is there out there. I'm aware of a body of documents and journals that aren't readily accessible, like on the church history catalog. There's some things that are not digitized. I don't know if the church plans on digitizing them, but there's some things that are not digitized. So there's like a whole body of work there. Sometimes I'll come across quotes that quote something else, and I don't know where to find that quote. So hopefully as time goes on, we get more and more access to these things. But we're going to be looking at this one. And there's so much in this that I'm going to have to break it up into a few different videos. I was going to just do one video, but then it started getting really long. Okay, so this is President Alvin R. Dyer. At the time that he gave this speech, he was assistant to the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. He later became an apostle, but not a member of the Quorum of the 12. And then he was brought into the first presidency as a third counselor. The reason why is because previously he had been the president of the Central States Mission. He had been involved in various Missouri historical societies. And President David O. McKay tapped him to do a special work with the lands here in Missouri, including the purchase of Spring Hill and lands at Adam-ondi-Ahman and the beautification of Far West and the construction of the Independence Visitor Center. So this is a special individual. After that, he returned to be assistant to the Quorum of the 12, but he retained his priesthood office as an apostle. And then he went into the first Quorum of the 70 as an apostle. So I'm not aware of anybody else that has taken this path in church leadership. He is special. This is who is speaking as we read this. So I went ahead and I took the transcript from YouTube and I went through here. There's probably some mistakes, but we're looking at my spreadsheet called Quotes A through Z. This is currently row 18 for Adam-ondi-Ahman altars. But this quote is in other places on my spreadsheet because it applies to a number of different things. We're going to start right here. He says, it is probably common knowledge now throughout the church, at least I hear the reverberations of it wherever I go, but not long ago, in fact, only 7 months ago, in June of 1966, with President David McKay, President Joseph Fielding Smith, and several others, I stood in the valley of Adam-ondi-Ahman in Daviess County, Missouri. I have in my folder the journal record of our memorable visit. But in our thoughts that day, there loomed before us the importance of this hallowed place to the future of the church and the kingdom of God. Our automobile rested in the large valley of Adam-ondi-Ahman at the base of Spring Hill. Just really quick, I was there just a couple weeks ago when there was still snow. I like to get pictures of these church sites under various conditions: nighttime, sunsets, when there's snow, when there's fog. And so I got my snow pictures at Adam-ondi-Ahman, and it was a really kind of magical evening. The lighting was amazing. I love sunset and twilight, and it was really happy. But okay, so they were here in the valley of Adam-ondi-Ahman at this point of his speech. Oops. Of course, come back to the tab and it has to put me down to another place. Okay. Our automobile rested in the large valley of Adam-ondi-Ahman at the base of Spring Hill, and we could clearly see Spring Hill, on the bluff of which a temple site has been dedicated. Okay, so just a little correction to the email. The temple would have been built on Spring Hill, not near Spring Hill, but on top of Spring Hill on the bluff. And this phrase right here is important. A temple site has been dedicated, because as with most things in the church, there's usually debates over prophecy or church history or doctrine. And I've encountered this a couple times where people have insisted that there's not going to be a temple at Adam-ondi-Ahman, that a temple site had not been dedicated. Whenever I brought this up until now, I've only had a couple mentions of the temple site. I think the one that most people are familiar with is this account from President Heber C. Kimball, first counselor in the first presidency. This is in Life of Heber C. Kimball, compiled by Orson F. Whitney. And he says, "While there, we laid out a city on a high elevated piece of land and the stakes for the four corners of a temple block, which was dedicated, Brother Brigham Young being mouth. There were from 300 to 500 men present on the occasion under arms." So I've heard the argument made that, well, look, it says temple block, but it doesn't say temple site, which to me, that's kind of arbitrary. I never really accepted that as a very good argument. But now we have it really clear. Well, actually, before this point, I have a couple other quotes here where it talks about it. Let's see. This is also from Alvin R. Dyer. It's in the David O. McKay diaries. And at the end, it says, "It was clearly seen at this point how the historic area of Spring Hill of Adam-ondi-Ahman had been preserved from inundation by the relocation of the dam site. The high point of Spring Hill was pointed out to the president. It is upon this high part of the bluff where the temple site was dedicated, and near to this is the site of the altar of Adam." And of course, he's referring to the altar of sacrifice, not the altar of prayer. And then another one, this is also from President Alvin R. Dyer. This entry is from October 6, 1969. So this is after the speech that we're reading right now. But toward the end, he says, okay, "I explained to the brethren present that this work would need to go forward slowly, but yet methodically, to accomplish the purpose of obtaining properties in the Missouri area, centered around four particular areas where land had been consecrated and dedicated for the building of temples and a city of Zion. This included the following locations: Independence, Missouri, where land had been consecrated and dedicated. Oh, oops, I started reading the same line. Independence, Missouri, Jackson County. Far West, Missouri, Caldwell County. Adam-ondi-Ahman, Daviess County. And the fourth location being approximately on the border of Caldwell and Daviess counties, in a direct line between Adam-ondi-Ahman and Far West, where the prophet had dedicated the land to be a city of Zion of God. Through other research and in other videos, we have learned that that fourth city is the city of Seth. It's like it said, it's between Adam-ondi-Ahman and Far West. There's nothing to see there, although I did go to the general area, but that was also supposed to be a special city and a city with a temple. So anyway, now we have a fourth quote talking about the fact that there's a temple site that was dedicated up there. And you can actually go walk up there. Most people don't know that you can continue following the trail and go up to Spring Hill. If you go all the way up Spring Hill to the highest point, and I'm not talking about Spring Hill Summit, which is off the side of the road as you're driving to Tower Hill, but I'm talking about this part of Spring Hill. You come to marker number 10 for a public square and religious site. We'll come back to this in just a minute. Okay, so let's start again. Our automobile rested in the large valley of Adam-ondi-Ahman at the base of Spring Hill, and we could clearly see Spring Hill, on the bluff of which a temple site had been dedicated, and where the altar of Adam once stood, which was used for sacrifice. The other altar on Tower Hill, which is also nearby, was used for prayer. Okay, so there's two altars, one for sacrifice, one for prayer. And according to the prophet Joseph Smith, this is the altar where Adam gathered together his children at eventide. But the altar of sacrifice, wherein the angel of the Lord appeared unto Adam and asked him why he offered sacrifice, and he said, I know not, save the Lord hath commanded me. And that altar is on the place we call Spring Hill, near the temple site. So let's go to my map of Adam-ondi-Ahman. The link for my map is in the description box below. Here is the valley of Adam-ondi-Ahman. It runs east and west. Over to the east, you have the valley overlook, and over to the west, it takes you to Tower Hill and Spring Hill. You park right here, and there's the bathrooms right here and a parking lot area. And most people come down here, down this path, and then they'll see this marker. Let me click on this. And it doesn't talk about the fact that this was the site of Adam's altar. They probably don't want to go that far into our beliefs because, you know, there's lots of people that go to Adam-ondi-Ahman. They do mention the second coming on at least a couple of the signs, I think. But anyway, it just talks about the fact that there was a stone altar here. If you go onto the grass a little bit, you'll see this cement block. And this is marker number 1. It's not numbered, like it doesn't have a number on it, but this marks the site of the altar of prayer. If you continue down the path past Lyman White's second cabin and Preacher's Rock, and you go to the right, you follow this. Don't go down that service road. Then you continue to your second right, and then this takes you up to Spring Hill. And you just follow this path. You pass this marker right here, View Lot Cabin Site, marker number 23. And then up here is marker number 10 for the temple site. And it's somewhere over here that the altar of sacrifice was. Okay, so let's go back to this. I stood on that bluff not many months ago on the very place where the storehouse had been erected. And there is still discernible the broken red brick of the storehouse. And the storehouse was very close to the temple site, and the altar of sacrifice was not many yards from this sacred place. Okay, that's an important detail because when you read, there's this series of books called Sacred Places. It's a multi-volume set, and one of them is Sacred Places, Missouri. It talks about the fact that there's a kind of a debate about where the temple was, but it seems that the consensus that it would be at the marker that I just showed you. Well, I feel like this kind of ends the debate because he says that he still saw the broken red brick of the storehouse. So let me go back to this video. This is on my other channel called Explore Church Sites. On this side, you have marker number 10, public square and religious site. But then if you walk around to the other side, this also marks the spot of the Fuert Brickyard, Cravensville period, marker number 12. So yeah, this is the site where the temple was going to be constructed and will be sometime in the future. So coming across this quote was big for me that he said that. Okay, but there's more. There's more. That's not it. Okay, continuing. According to many accounts given to us in the various histories of the church and in the journal records of many of the brethren, there in this area where we stood that day, according to the revelations, is where Adam, or the Ancient of Days spoken of by Daniel the prophet, will sit to receive from those who still stand before him the keys of all dispensations. You know, I should highlight that. They're in this area. Okay, so typically we think about the valley of Adam-ondi-Ahman where that would take place. And he's saying here that in this area, I think he's still talking about the temple site and altar site area. There, in this area where we stood that day, according to the revelations, is where, well, unless okay, this part's maybe ambiguous because he talked about our automobile resting in the large valley of Adam-ondi-Ahman at the base of Spring Hill, and they could see Spring Hill, and then he goes on a tangent talking about the temple site. So no, maybe he is talking about the valley. I'm going to turn that back to black. You let me know. What do you think? Do you think he's talking about the temple site when he says there in this area where we stood that day? Or do you think he's talking about the valley where the car was? Okay, well, anyway, continuing. Among these will be the prophet Joseph Smith, representing the dispensation of the fullness of times as testified to by the Lord himself, and as contained in section 27 of the Doctrine and Covenants. At this great council meeting of Adam-ondi-Ahman, not many years hence, the Son of Man will appear and will receive from Adam the stewardship, which will contain the keys of the universe. I think that this is important too, because I feel like there's a misconception out there that all the keys, so like the priesthood keys that your elders quorum president holds, your bishop, the deacons quorum president, teachers quorum president, stake presidents, everybody, like they're no longer going to have those keys. All of them are going back to Christ. And so since we haven't seen that happen, we know that Adam-ondi-Ahman hasn't happened yet. And I don't think that that's what it means. I think it's just, I have another quote. I'm not going to read it right now, but it talks about the fact that since the beginning of our life here on earth, since the beginning of mortality, Adam has been the one that has presided over all the priesthood keys. And after he died and left this earth, it was still under his stewardship. Whenever priesthood keys were restored, it came from him. He's the one that oversaw that. And now that Christ is going to be here, he steps into that role. Not that he literally takes all the keys from everybody, and now he's the only one that does the thing that bishops do and elders quorum presidents and so forth. Okay, continuing. We're given to understand that many others by appointment will be present at this great priesthood meeting, but the world will not know of it, nor will many within the church. Okay, so this is the second quote that I've come across recently that confirms this fact, because at this point, I'm just going to call it a misconception because I have it said 3 times. Let's go to my spreadsheet called Quotes Common Misconceptions. I've created a completely new row for the topic Adam-ondi-Ahman. And the misconception, and I feel sure of it at this point because I have these 3 quotes. All the righteous in the church will attend the meeting at Adam-ondi-Ahman. So the first time that I heard this, I only had this one quote from Elder Joseph Fielding Smith of the Quorum of the 12 in his book called The Way to Perfection, page 291. So he's talking about Adam-ondi-Ahman, and at this part he says, when this gathering is held, the world will not know of it. The members of the church at large will not know of it. Yet, it will be preparatory to the coming in the clouds of glory of our Savior Jesus Christ, as the prophet Joseph Smith has said. The world cannot know of it. The saints cannot know of it, except those who officially shall be called into this council. For it shall precede the coming of Jesus Christ as a thief in the night, unbeknown to all the world. And that makes complete sense to me, because you look at scriptures such as in Matthew 24, where it says, I come at a time that ye think not. And it seems really clear that you're supposed to be ready before the final appearance, where the wicked are destroyed and the earth is cleansed with fire, because that's the moment where you better make sure that you're not classed among the wicked. And so if you had this kind of like view that's been entertained for a long time among authors and content creators and stuff, if you had this thing where the entire church had to make their way from Japan and Canada and South America, all across the world, to Adam-ondi-Ahman, undoubtedly that would include those that are living a telestial law. And imagine that they were there at Adam-ondi-Ahman, or that they were even aware that it was happening. Then they themselves would probably, at least some of them, would be like, okay, yeah, I need to start to shape up. I need to get myself right. And that's not how it's supposed to be. You're supposed to be doing that anyway. We're in mortality. We're being tested. This is our probation. And we're not to be given these like really big hints where it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I need to change right now. No. You're supposed to use your agency and do the work yourself to gain a testimony and use faith, rather than having hard evidence like this, where you're at Adam-ondi-Ahman, you actually see Jesus Christ, you actually see Adam and Joseph Smith and those that have gone before, because that would rob you of your faith. So it's always been kind of a problem for me. But anyway, we have this from Joseph Fielding Smith. We have the one that we're reading right now from Alvin R. Dyer. And then we have this from Randall C. Bird, CES Associate Director and Instructor, Ogden LDS Institute. You can find this, let's see. Okay, this is posted. You know what? I don't think oh yeah, no. So this is on YouTube on a channel called Millennium, posted September 11th, 2023, Randall C. Bird, Millennium. And I have these other references because I was like, well, I want to know exactly when that took place. It's mentioned in BYU's The Daily Universe, as well as Church News. This was during Education Week, back in 2005. So he said the same thing. Okay, he says, I've always had on my mind on occasion, how do you know if you're supposed to be there and then be prepared for this great millennial reign to be ushered in shortly thereafter? And so I was in a priesthood leadership meeting with one of the 12 a few years ago. I should highlight that. One of the 12. That's a key bit of information. Meeting with one of the 12 a few years ago. In this leadership meeting, this good apostle stopped and allowed us time to ask questions. The first question came from a stake president who asked something about the young adult program in his stake. This great apostle, wanting to teach something I think profoundly to the stake president and to the rest of us, said, "President, who holds the keys in your stake?" The stake president responded by saying, "I do." Then this great apostle, wanting to teach this great principle, said, "Then turn them." Obviously, he was trying to let us all know that as stake presidents, we have the opportunity to receive revelation, inspiration that will bless the membership of our stake. Well, after a couple of other questions where the same response was given to turn the keys, I sat there wanting to ask a question that I wondered if I should ask. And maybe, looking back now, maybe I should not have asked it. I wanted to know how would you know if you're to be at Adam-ondi-Ahman? Many of you probably have thought the same thing. I wrestled with whether to ask it or not. I raised my hand. This great beloved apostle then called upon me. I asked the question that probably some of you have on your mind. And then before I asked it, I began to think, I have no keys for Adam-ondi-Ahman. I'm safe on that one. I think I can ask this question. And the worst thing he'll say is, that's a dumb question, or please don't ask questions like that. And this great apostle said, now that's a good question. I'm so glad. Okay, continuing. You almost want to go, yes, I got a good question. At any rate, he responded with the following. He said, if you're to be there, it will come through the priesthood by appointment. That was the answer. I then wanted to follow it up, but dared not. I wanted to know, would it come as a letter in the mail? Would it be from the pulpit? How does this happen? I'm sure that's nothing I needed to know, and I'm grateful I did not ask that question. And then he references what we were just reading from the book called Ways to Perfection by Joseph Fielding Smith. So, all right, so now we have 3 quotes that talk about that. And I think that's pretty much it. Let's just finish off this paragraph. According to the prophet Joseph Smith, this will be a day of judgment, a day of preparation, for the Lord will receive of the dominion and the glory of the earth, as plans will go forward for the culmination of God's work here upon the earth in the millennial reign of the Son of God, to be officially established by his glorious second coming. And then after that, and we'll cover this in future videos, he goes into the New Jerusalem and the temples, and I think there were a couple other, there's a few other things as well. So this is a talk that is just rich in gems. From this one, again, we got some statements about the two altars, just kind of like talking about the fact that you have these 2 altars, the altar for sacrifice up here on Spring Hill, the altar of prayer down here. And he talked about the fact that the altar of prayer is where Adam would meet with his posterity at eventide. And then we have clarification that this is the temple site up here at marker number 10, if it'll pull up. And when you look at the other side, man, this is just not working. But then when you look at the other side, you got the Brickyard, Cravensville period. And he talked about the fact that when he was there back in the 60s, there were still some bricks there. So this definitely is the temple site. And then he talked about who's going to be there, and that it's not going to be everybody in the church. It seems like it's going to be a relatively small group of people. I'm assuming that it's mostly going to be like 70, if you're like in the 70 or above. And maybe not even the 70, maybe just the presidency of the 70, for all I know. But anyway, I just want to thank you, Jeff, for pointing this out, and I'm really glad that I didn't pass up your email. If any of you come across things like this, please let me know. Keep an eye on anything that's newly published, even if it's from 1967 or just from a long time ago. But that's going to be for this one. I'll talk to you guys later.